Little boxes on the hillside, little boxes made of ticky-tacky, little boxes on the hillside, little boxes all the same.
Something strange is happening behind the net curtains of suburbia. A multi-million-pound criminal business has sprung up overnight.
Just the same.
Police! We're talking about potential slavery here, prostitution, violence, murder, everything that goes with that.
And the business bringing those crimes to suburbia? Cannabis farming.
The sea of green, a complete room converted into a cannabis cultivation.
Marijuana now is a hardcore drug that is grown by cynical people who are accomplished predators who will use absolutely anybody or anything to make their profit.
Tonight, come with us to a world where the seeds of major criminal fortunes are being sown behind our closed suburban doors. We've all been influenced by the 60s. To be truthful, many of us probably think smoking and growing marijuana is harmless, getting one over on the system. But is it really that simple? Cannabis was the soft drug which powered the 60s. Today, more than 2.5 million Brits still smoke it, so you could perhaps be forgiven for viewing the growing of the drug as just a harmless cottage industry. Well, we're hearing there's a darker side to the weed trade, which is becoming a multi-million-pound business right here in Scotland. This is Leven in Fife. It's where our journey into the dark side of cannabis farming begins. Police are preparing for a raid after receiving a tip-off.
There's approximately 50 plants within the attic. He does have warning signs for violence and for weapons, so just every precaution, everybody will be wearing a protective vest to make sure you've got your CS spray and your battens.
The drugs team is heading to a house where they believe a cannabis farm is operating. Growers need one thing, unobtrusive property like this to set up in. Today, the suspect does the smart thing and he opens the door. Officers are quickly inside and straight up into the attic space. Despite his violent past, the suspect is cooperating.
Been up the loft space and there's a good going quantity of quite mature cannabis plants.
With the tip-off bang on, the suspect is taken into custody. Up in the attic, and we see our first suburban cannabis farm.
I mean, we've got roughly 30 adult plants here, all connected up to the lighting system, which was on a timer, just to obviously heat the plants at certain times of the day. And behind you there's a number of watering cans, so they've obviously been watering the plants manually rather than sometimes you get an irrigation system where it's on a timer and it's actually sprinkling water onto the plants at various times of the day. We've got here a good setup with an extractor fan going right up and out the roof, obviously to take away the heat and the smell. I mean, sometimes you tend to find if it's not quite as good a setup and it doesn't have the extractor fans, that neighbours will get the smell permeating through to their house, and they're the ones that usually notify the police if they get this strong, sweet smell that cannabis gives off. You could smell it yourself, obviously being here.
All this specialised lighting equipment was being powered from just 3 small sockets connected to a light fitting in the room below. To add insult to injury, the suspect hasn't even been paying for all that electricity. He's bypassed the meter.
Those 2 thin strands are what was supplying the electricity to this house. Crazy, innit? Crazy. They don't realise how much, well, I don't suppose they care how much danger they're putting themselves.
A wee bit knowledge is a dangerous thing, eh? Right, keep that.
It's a good result for us. 30 plants, we'll work out exactly what that is when we get back to put a value on it, but it's certainly more than enough for personal use, and it would constitute dealing amounts. It's certainly more than one person is going to produce for their own private use. So it will be a case for dealing amounts of cannabis.
So innocent looking.
This property provided what any good cannabis farmer needs, the cover of suburbia. Today, police have closed down a farm they reckon contained £10,000 worth of plants. It's a surprising discovery in a street like this, but as we'll soon discover, this is actually small fry. Cannabis farming is becoming an unlikely link between some of Scotland's more select suburbs. A border market town. A prestigious postcode with a link to Robert Burns. Dundee's answer to Wisteria Lane. And Edinburgh's Riviera. All have seen weed farms springing up in the last 3 years. Police seizures from cannabis farms have gone from almost nothing 5 years ago to averaging £10 million a year. Of course, the drugs seized are just the tip of the iceberg. Police told me they believe the industry is probably worth around £100 million a year. To put that into perspective, that's more than twice what we sell in terms of eggs, more than 10 times what we make in Scottish raspberries, and equivalent to the entire Scottish vegetable crop. So where are the thousands of farms supplying that trade? This is Annie's Land, a nice suburb of Glasgow's West End, street upon street of unassuming suburbia, providing exactly the kind of properties in which the cannabis farmer will operate. Almost all the farms discovered are in rented properties.
Right away, when you come to the doorway, there's a name D.
And as this police footage shows, can be right next door to you or I. This one contained hundreds of plants worth a small fortune.
The value of these plants will undoubtedly amount to thousands and thousands of pounds.
The set-up costs for an operation of this size can be around £3,000, a small outlay given the big profits which can be made. This farm had been making thousands from producing cannabis, yet had gone completely unnoticed, even by those who lived next door. It was only discovered when the botched electrics started a fire, threatening the whole block of flats.
Now, we have to be careful here. This is what I would probably have described as a front room. We've got fire officers working in the flat below where the fire has dropped through.
These pictures show the extensive damage caused to the family home directly beneath the farm.
Insurance companies are paying out millions of pounds to damage. Utility companies are losing tens of millions of pounds in lost revenue for electricity. There's issues around about the damage. As I say, £17,000 on average damage to a house that you as the homeowner maybe I'll have to pay if your insurance company refused to settle because you've not managed your property effectively. It's only a matter of time before one of these fires kills either the gardeners or their neighbours as a consequence.
Alan Buchanan is the man in charge of tackling cannabis farming across Scotland.
We know that it is increasing and it's a multi-million-pound business.
I mean, why did the cannabis start to actually be grown in this country? What's the difference with the cannabis we're talking about today?
I think because the individuals involved in it realised that they could grow it. It didn't have to be brought in from abroad, from Morocco and various other countries. They had the technology, the capability to grow it. It's not a particularly difficult process to go through if they've got the know-how to do it. They just need space, they need accommodation, they need an area to grow it.
So just who are the people Alan Buchanan and his team are chasing? This is Kea Russell-Whittaker. She's something of an expert in the field of cannabis farming.
So this is what you're looking at. You've got propagators, they're absolutely crucial.
And then what, these four?
These are very important because they look after your babies, which are very, very fragile once you've potted them up.
Kea's a well-educated woman with a university degree. But her interest in marijuana is more than academic. She only knows about the finer points of growing weed because she got rich doing it. very rich.
I added up just the 1 year alone, and that was £170,000 that we made. It's like a recipe. Once you've been given the formula, you go ahead, you mix the ingredients exactly like you're making a cake, you practice a few times, and before you know it, you're adept. So by the end of your first crop, which is from 6 to 8 weeks, you're definitely starting to get the feel of it. You're also starting to get the feel of all the things that can go wrong. By the end of your second crop, you're definitely a mature enough grower to be able to go on and grow on your own.
So are you growing anything there? No, I mean legally. Tomatoes.
Kaya's a world away from what you'd expect a drug dealer to be like. She makes growing sound almost romantic.
It really felt like an epic adventure to then set up this hydroponic grow farm with lights, which you can buy from a wholesaler, chemicals, which you buy from a wholesaler, and grow medium, and you mix up the chemicals, and your lights are on little chains and on timers, and they roll back and forth on the ceiling, and your plants sway in the wind of fans, and it all feels like you're part of a James Bond movie. And at some point, you dream of being able to sell what you're so excited about growing. And you take it somewhere, you sell it to somebody who gives you the cash on demand. So you go with a rucksack full of marijuana and you come back with, you know, £12,000 to £16,000 in cash. And I can't think of anybody that wouldn't want to go on that adventure initially.
Kaya took me to one of the houses where she used to grow. She told me she'd set up the farm here in Crediton because she needed money to escape an abusive partner. She was nervous about returning because she feared some of her old drug contacts might still be here and have scores to settle.
So which house?
The one with the cream facade on the ground floor.
So that was your house?
It was a sizable grow room, 2 bedrooms knocked into one.
And either side of where you were growing? Who?
We had these 2 gorgeous old ladies that I adored. Unfortunately, the walls were very thick, so they were never disturbed by what we were doing.
So I mean, from the outside, you would never be able to guess what was going on?
Not at all, not at all. Because you'd have your net curtains up against the window and then board behind them, which perhaps would be painted white or grey. And so you had no sense that there was a completely different thing going on behind the windows.
It just looks like every other house in the street.
Yes,
it does.
does.
To think that behind those windows was a cannabis farm.
Well,
Your
that's
cannabis
exactly
farm.
why we chose it, because look at it, you would never suspect. That's why it was chosen, and nobody looks up there anyway, do they? You look at the first floor.
You could start looking at properties now, don't you, and go,
Put the
why are
camera
those
down,
windows?
Put the camera down. That lady on the left, that lady walking along the right just recognised me. She's a neighbour. We should drive.
You want to go?
Yeah.
Kaya had seemed so normal, I'd almost forgotten she'd been a drug dealer, until she panicked when spotted by a neighbour. Her dream of becoming a successful cannabis farmer here in sleepy Devon turned sour pretty quickly. Addicted to her own product, her life began to fall apart.
You're dealing with paranoia, depression, you're on the fringes of society, and you may have a bag full of cash, but you haven't got anything else.
Kaya's last farm here in Crediton was busted after a year. She says that actually came as a relief. She hated the person she'd become.
There's this kind of legacy from the 1960s that marijuana is this fantastic hippie drug that was part of the sexual revolution, and those days are gone, they're history. Marijuana now is a hardcore drug that is grown by cynical people who are accomplished predators who will use absolutely anybody or anything to make their profit. Whether it's their own children, their parents, they will use anybody to launder money, and they will use anybody as a cover.
Are you describing yourself?
Yes. I'm sorry to say that I am.
Kaya was at the forefront of an explosion in farming which changed the nature of the drug available in the UK. To find out why that drug was so different and such a moneymaker, I've come to the Forensic Science Service laboratory in London, where comprehensive tests are done on the drugs seized from all across the country.
The 3 main forms of cannabis,